Hello, my name is Deborah Federico, and I am the Associate Director for Career Education in the Office of Career Services and Internships at UMass Boston. The purpose of this LinkedIn presentation is to show students the benefits of being on LinkedIn and to let you know how critical it is to have a professional LinkedIn profile because employers are looking you up on LinkedIn when you apply for internships and full-time jobs. I want to let you know that this presentation is a tutorial, so it would be best viewed while you are sitting at your laptop so that you can make changes on your LinkedIn profile while you are watching this presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me in terms of my LinkedIn knowledge. So I've been on LinkedIn for over 10 years, and I have over 2,000 followers and over 2,000 connections. And I call myself a self-professed LinkedIn nerd because I always love to stay current with what's happening on LinkedIn. I've also published several articles there dealing with all different topics related to careers. This next slide shows you the power of LinkedIn. There's so many things that you can do there. So currently there are over 600 million users on LinkedIn, and that's constantly growing, and about half of those are active users logging in at least once a month. And then you can see that there are so many countries and industries represented there, as well as 20 million active job posts and data for more than 9 million companies. But the point that I think is most fascinating is that 97% of HR and staffing professionals use LinkedIn when recruiting new hires. So it's their go-to source for looking for candidates, and that's the number one reason why you need to be on there so that you can be found by recruiters. And the last point is that hiring managers and C-level managers are also perusing it for solid candidates for their jobs. So as you can see from the slide, the primary purpose of being on LinkedIn is for networking. And that may be a surprise to some of you because some people think that LinkedIn is just an electronic portfolio or an electronic resume. But as you will see in the subsequent slides, it's much, much more than that. And there are so many things that you can do on LinkedIn that you weren't able to do before in terms of networking. So on this slide, you can see the benefits of being on LinkedIn. So you can build a profile that is much more dynamic and multimedia rich than a resume could ever be, because a resume is one piece of paper in black and white text, right? But LinkedIn is colorful, it has images. You can establish your personal brand by how you write your headline and your summary. And you can apply to many companies with your LinkedIn profile these days, so you don't even have to send a resume. And I think that that will be a growing trend. So yet another reason to build a strong LinkedIn profile. In the middle section, you'll see how you can get information about your career field, right? And you can get known by posting a lot on LinkedIn, and you can network with people in your career field from all over the world, get insider tips, and stay current with news about your field. And lastly, as I mentioned in a previous slide, is you can be found by recruiters for career opportunities, and many of my students have said that they have been, and you can search for career opportunities. So as you can see, LinkedIn is a pretty amazing site with a lot of opportunities for you. So the next several slides are the tutorial section of this presentation where you can start building your LinkedIn profile on your own with this step-by-step guide. And so the first slide is going to show you how to customize your LinkedIn URL and to make your profile private. So LinkedIn will give you a URL. The default URL has a lot of symbols and numbers and letters after it, after your name, but I'll show you how to fix that and make it just your name. And then I'll also show you how to make your profile private while you're working on it. Because just like with a resume draft, you wouldn't want anyone to see that. And the same thing with your LinkedIn profile. You don't want anyone to see it while it's in a work in progress. Because if somebody sees your LinkedIn profile and they get a negative impression, they may never go back to see it again. So after you've pulled down the Me menu at the top of the LinkedIn profile page, you want to select Privacy and edit your public profile. In the top upper right-hand corner of the screen, you will see Personalize the URL for your profile, and you can just use the edit tool to take out the letters, numbers, and symbols that might be at the end of your URL and make it just your name like I have. If you have a common name, you might not be able to get that URL, so you may have to put in a middle initial or put in a dot between your names or be somewhat creative so that you can get a cleaner URL. So why do you need a clean URL? Well, you can put this URL on your resume in the contact information section at the top, and you could put it on your business cards. So it's important to have a clean URL. The second thing I want to show you on this slide is the edit visibility section, where I talked about in the previous slide that you don't want your profile to be public until it's finalized and professional and ready for public viewing. So while it's being worked on, you want to make your profile visible to no one. So you want to shut that off, right? So, and then you won't see any profile here, as you see on the slide. Similar to a resume, you want to build your LinkedIn profile by adding sections. So as you can see on the screen, there are some similar sections that you would find on a resume, such as work experience, education, licenses and certifications, and volunteer experience, as well as skills, accomplishments, additional information, and supported languages. So I would recommend that you explore all of these sections and see which ones pertain to you so that you can build a very robust profile that will impress employers. As a student, you should pay special attention to the accomplishments section and pull down that menu because there are many things there that you could potentially add to your profile, such as publications, patents, courses that you've taken, any projects that you've done in your courses, especially if you don't have any relevant work experiences. Projects are really good to add. Honors and awards, test scores, languages, and organizations or student clubs that you might be involved in at UMass Boston and elsewhere. So these are all good things to add to your LinkedIn profile. This next slide is about your LinkedIn photos, and there are two of them you need to pay attention to. The first one is the one that I call your cover photo, similar to Facebook, which spreads across the LinkedIn profile page, and you want that to be consistent with the career field that you want to go into. So in this student's case, you can see that he has a picture of New York City, and the reason he has that is because he wants to work on Wall Street. So think about what picture would signify the career field that you would like to go into. Secondly is the headshot photo, which you can do on your own. You don't need to have it professionally taken, but you just want to make sure that it's an appropriate photo, that you're dressed in business attire, and that it's just you. It's not a group photo. So statistics say that profiles with photos are 11 times more credible, and it increases your credibility with employers. So you really should have a profile picture. I think that the LinkedIn headline is one of the most important pieces of your LinkedIn profile. And as you can see, your headline goes right below your name. On this slide, I've given you 3 examples of headlines. And as you can see, one is for the student that we previously looked at, and then there's mine, and then there's another one for a recent UMB grad. You want to put a lot of thought into your headline because it's the first thing that people will see when they look at your profile. when they Google your name and see your name in LinkedIn, they will also see your headline. So it's a really important thing to think about. You want to position yourself with your headline in terms of what you want in a career, and also maybe putting in some of your strengths and expertise. I really like the first one a lot because he gives a lot of good details about who he is and what he wants. And mine is a collection of different things that I feel that I'm good at, and you can do this approach as well by separating pieces of information with vertical lines. And then Alex's at the end tells you that he's a marketing person, he's in the food business, and so his is a little bit different, but these are all good. So just take some time to think about, how do you want to be perceived on LinkedIn? What do you want the world to know about you? What are your strong points? The thing I would recommend not having is just student at UMass Boston, which is the default headline, because that really doesn't say much about you. The next thing I want to talk about is the skills section on LinkedIn. So you are responsible for adding those skills, and you just have to click on add skill and type in a skill that you have. And LinkedIn has a database of skills, so you get to select from their database. For example, if you put in Excel, I think it gives you like 4 different options for your level of expertise in Excel. You have up to 50 skills that you can add, but I wouldn't recommend adding that many because you want to have a small set of strong skills rather than a large set of weak skills. I would recommend putting in skills that you have as a starting point, but then also look at job descriptions for the kinds of positions that you want and look at the skills that they are requiring in a candidate. And that's a good indication of the kinds of skills that you should put on your LinkedIn profile so that employers can see that you have them when they look you up. Another thing about skills is that people in your network can endorse you for a skill by clicking a plus sign. And the more endorsements you get for a particular skill, the better, because it shows your future employers and anybody in your network that other people also think you have those skills. To continue the thought about skills on LinkedIn, I wanted to show you the top 8 skills that employers are looking for in new graduates when they're hiring, and for interns as well. So these skills are ranked in order of priority. So the number 1 skill that employers are looking for is critical thinking / problem solving. And then you can see the list goes down and then over. So the next highest required skill would be teamwork, and so on. So I would recommend that you take a look at this list, and if you have these skills, to incorporate them into your LinkedIn profile as well as onto your resume. Because as I said, these are the top skills that our employers are looking for when hiring new grads. I want to talk now about getting a recommendation on LinkedIn. I'm sure many of you have letters of recommendation from professors or teachers or coaches, but they're buried away somewhere in a desk drawer or in a box. So the beauty of a recommendation on LinkedIn is that everyone can see it who's looking at your profile. So I'm going to walk you through now how to request a recommendation on LinkedIn. So you see on the slide that this is my boss's LinkedIn profile, Mark Kenyon. And so if I wanted to ask him to write me a recommendation on LinkedIn, I would pull down the More button in the middle of the page and just click on Request a Recommendation. So after that, LinkedIn will walk you through a series of questions in terms of how your relationship was at work, in terms was he your supervisor, how long did you work with him, and so forth. And then after you complete that, the person that you want a recommendation from will get an email stating that you're looking for a recommendation. And then hopefully that person will write it for you. They send it back to you. You get to look at it and make sure it's fine. If you want to change anything, you can let them know. And then once you're fine with it, you get to post it on your LinkedIn profile. So nobody can post anything on your profile without your permission. So this slide is a screenshot taken from one of our peer career advisors' LinkedIn profiles. And as you can see, she has at least 2 recommendations and then more if you pull down the show more menu. I just wanted to give you a depiction of what recommendations would look like on your LinkedIn profile. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the primary purpose of being on LinkedIn is to network. And in order to network, you have to add people to your network. So all you have to do is in the search box, put in the name of someone you know. It could be a peer in your classes, it could be a professor or somebody you know at UMass Boston or elsewhere. And then when you find their profile, you're going to click on it and ask to connect. I would recommend adding people to your network that you currently know, and then as you end up meeting professional people, say at a networking event or a career fair or a company information session, that you add those people to your network to start building up your professional network. This is the screenshot of what you will see when you click on somebody's name to connect. So it will ask you if you want to send them a note. And I highly recommend that you add a note, especially if it's a recruiter that you're trying to connect with or some other professional that you met at an event, because the note is going to show that you're a professional, you know proper business etiquette, and you're taking the time to show this person that you really value that person as a member of your network. This next slide is really going to demonstrate to you the power of LinkedIn and the wealth of resources and information you can find here. So if you put your career field in the search box, and as you see here, I put in marketing, what you will get are people who work in the marketing field, jobs in marketing, content, which means news or articles, information about the marketing field. You'll find under the More pull-down menu, you'll find companies that do marketing, schools if you wanted to further your education in the marketing field, and then lastly, groups, which is my favorite feature of LinkedIn, or one of my favorite features. So when you join groups, you'll be able to network with people who are working in the field that you want to get into. So before LinkedIn, college students were not able to network with professionals because they just, didn't have a venue to do that. But with LinkedIn, you can virtually network with professionals in your field locally and all over the world. Now this slide represents my very favorite feature of LinkedIn, and I'm going to teach you how to find alumni on LinkedIn for networking purposes. So what you need to do is in the search box, put the University of Massachusetts Boston in full, and then select the school name. What you see now is the alumni page for all UMass Boston alumni who are on LinkedIn. So as you can see, there are over 68,000. The alumni do not have to opt into this page. They're automatically put here just by virtue of being on LinkedIn. So you can search this database by a number of ways to find alumni to network with. And every time I demonstrate this in class, I ask students for a company name that's their dream company, and inevitably I've found an alum who works at that company. I've found alums who work at Facebook, Google, NASA, you name it. So definitely tap into this valuable resource when you are looking to meet people that can help you in your career field. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, you can search by company name, name of the alum if you know it. You can search by titles. So say, for example, if you wanted to be a investment manager, you can search on that title to see who in the alumni database is an investment manager. And then you would just connect with them, as I showed you in a previous slide, to set up a time to meet for an informational interview or to do it by phone. You can also search by job function, industry, etc. So there are a number of ways you can search the alumni database. One thing I like to do is to put in a major. For example, if you put in psychology, then you'll see all of the psychology majors on LinkedIn who went to UMass Boston and what they are doing for a living. And it's a great way to show you the numerous things that you can do with your major in terms of a career. This next slide talks about the About section, which appears at the top of your LinkedIn profile underneath the headline. I always recommend that students do this last after they've done the other sections of their profile because it takes a lot of thought. And this is a section where you can demonstrate your personal brand, what you're all about. You can also talk about what makes you unique. Unlike a resume, you wouldn't have a section like this, but on LinkedIn, you do. And you can tell your personal story here. Do you have a backstory as to why you wanted to get into your particular career field? And this is a place to show that. You want to demonstrate your personality, and as I said, key accomplishments and achievements that make you stand out. I would also recommend putting keywords in the section that relate to your career field, because when recruiters are searching for candidates on LinkedIn, they are going to use those keywords. And if you have them in your profile, you'll be able to be found by recruiters. The way you can find these keywords is to look in a job description or job descriptions for the field that you want to enter. And after a while, you're going to be seeing the same keywords that appear in these job descriptions, and you want to add those to your About section. On this next slide, I'm showing you the profile of Alex Zolotov, who was a student that I worked with who has now graduated. So I want to talk about his About section, but I also want to point out his cover photo, which you see a picture of a donut. And the reason he has that is because Alex is passionate about working in the food industry. But I really want to talk about his About section, and you might not be able to read it so clearly, but in his About section, he talks about growing up in Russia and selling cookies door to door. And that's essentially how he got his interest in the food business, right? Now, this story would not go on a resume, but it's very appropriate for LinkedIn. As I mentioned in the previous slide, you want to show your uniqueness and sort of your backstory as to why you wanted to get into a particular career field. And I think that by telling your story, oftentimes it will set you apart from the competition, especially if you show your passion for why you want to do a particular career. This next slide shows Alex's full About section. And as we saw, he started this section with this intriguing story about selling cookies door to door in his home country of Russia. But then he goes on in the About section to also now talk about his experience, his passions, his qualifications, his accomplishments, and so forth. So you want to have an intriguing story, but you also want to have in your About section some solid information about what you can bring to the employer. So now I want to give you some strategic pointers about the use of LinkedIn. I already mentioned the term keywords, and you should integrate them into your headline and About section so that recruiters and hiring managers can find you because they'll be searching on those keywords. You want to aim to have at least 500 quality connections. Now, that's not going to happen overnight. You want to start building up your network gradually, and don't just start adding anyone. As it says here, you want to have quality connections. I also want to point out here that if people want to add you to their network, you have the right to either accept it or not. So that's up to you. The third point is to connect with recruiters and employees at the companies where you want to work, right? So recruiters will always say that they love it when students reach out to them to connect with them on LinkedIn. And oftentimes that can lead to interviews at the company and eventually getting a job. So make sure you take advantage of this great feature on LinkedIn. The fourth point is to follow companies of interest, right, that you're interested in working in. And when you do that, their logo will appear on your profile page so that when they look you up on LinkedIn, they'll see that you're following them and they'll know that you're really interested in working for their company. The other thing that happens when you follow companies of interest is that you will get news about them in your newsfeed daily. The second last point is when you're interviewing for a job, go on LinkedIn and see who in your network you know who works at the company, and try to make arrangements to speak with them in person or on the phone and get some inside information about the company culture, maybe about the hiring manager and so forth, because it will give you definitely a competitive advantage when interviewing as opposed to people who don't do that. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, use this site to connect with UMass Boston alumni and others for informational interviewing so that you can learn firsthand what a particular job is really like. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the primary purpose of being on LinkedIn is for networking. I recommend logging into LinkedIn often, and I log in every day, but I know sometimes people don't want to do that, so I would say weekly is good. Post items often and respond to others' posts. It's just a way to get your name out there. In the groups, the professional groups that I mentioned that you should join, you should contribute to group discussions, you can ask questions, you can send links to articles, and again, it's another way to get your name known in your field. The fourth point is to publish articles on LinkedIn, and it's really easy to do. All you have to do is write it and copy and paste it into your homepage and put it in your status. I've worked with several students who've published articles on LinkedIn. You can also communicate with your connections to network and collaborate, congratulate them on promotions and new jobs and good news, etc., which is a great thing to do. And then lastly, you can peruse newsfeed for relevant career information and job postings, etc. This slide shows you the special page that LinkedIn has for students, and you will see the URL at the bottom of the slide. On this page, you will find information specifically geared towards college students with regard to LinkedIn and other career topics. At the bottom of this page on LinkedIn, you'll also find a database of internships and entry-level positions. So the Office of Career Services and Internships has a page on LinkedIn, and we would love you to follow us. It's at Beacon Careers, and we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So please follow us to get up-to-date career information. If you have any questions at all about LinkedIn or any other career-related topic, please feel free to come and see us. Our contact information is listed on the slide. If you would like someone to review your LinkedIn profile for you, you can make an appointment with one of our career specialists by calling the number listed or making it through Handshake. Thank you for your time and attention and listening to this presentation, and we hope to see you soon in the Office of Career Services and Internships.